The Radical. Fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this Monday, February 16th. I hope everybody is having a good beginning of the week. Good Monday. Had a good weekend. All right, reminder that tonight we've got Augustina. So today we have two shows, one now and one tonight. We'll talk about Millet, and we'll talk about immigration. So hope you join us. It'll be 7 p.m. East Coast time tonight. All right, let's see. Yeah, let's just jump in. So, well, Marco Rubio spoke at the Munich Security Conference this last weekend, as did AOC. Marco Rubio had a main event. I mean, he was one of the keynote speakers. AOC was on a couple of panels, but she had an opportunity to opine on many of the issues of the day, particularly on foreign policy. The Munich Security Conference is dedicated to a large extent to issues of foreign policy, so there was a lot to do there. And some people said, "Oh, this is like a prep for the 2028 presidential election, Marco Rubio versus AOC." Let's hope AOC is not the Democratic candidate. You'll see in a minute. Yeah, she was pathetic here. Now I think she'll get better. Like she'll learn on how to frame her answers better. She's learned it on domestic policy. She'll now have to learn it on foreign policy. But she's awful, and you'll see why in a little bit. We'll get into that. I've got 4 segments from her speech to cover. But I want to start with Marco Rubio, because Marco Rubio gave what I think most people consider extraordinary speech at the conference. Maybe people who know Marco Rubio's history better than I do are probably the best speech he's ever given. It's a very different speech than what this is in Europe. It was in Munich. This is a very different speech than let's say our vice president gave in Europe, last year. JD Vance, in his speech last year, was very negative on Europe, very wagging the finger, very aggressive. And Rubio gave a very different speech, basically a speech of urging unity between America and Europe, in the name of Western civilization, in the name of we share a civilization. We'll get to Hungary in a little bit. We have to go event by event. The fact that these people contradict each other themselves all the time is not surprising. Europe is not a god-awful place. God, you guys need to get out. You should leave your homes and get on a plane and actually travel and go see the world. Europe is far from a god-awful place. Anyway, Rubio gave again, by most accounts, a rousing speech. He got a standing ovation, in Europe, which is pretty unusual these days for an American to be able to do, given the Trump administration's hostility to many of our allies in Europe, the attempt to take Greenland, just take it. That didn't go so well. Europe landed up managing to keep Greenland, and Trump had to retreat from that particular endeavor. This was a reconciliation speech. It was rousing. It got applause in the middle, and like 3 times, it got a standing ovation at the end. I mean, I'll take Rubio over Vance any day. I think Rubio's incredibly corrupt and bad. and there's elements of this speech that are really bad, and we'll get to that. But in comparison to Vance, in comparison to what Vance holds, in comparison to what Vance believes, Rubio is relatively good. Still bad, but relatively good. It would be good if the Republican nominee was actually from outside this administration, and it was somebody who actually rejected the ideas of national conservatism. Rubio does not. Rubio embraces it. I see there's a lot on the chat talking about Robert Duvall, the actor. We'll get to that. He died today, so I'll say a few words about him at the end. All right, so let's get into the speech. So I've got video of the speech. I'm gonna show bits of it. I'm doing it at 1.5 speed. Let me know if that's too fast for you guys. But this was he read the speech. It was pretty slow and deliberate. But he delivered fairly well. He could do a better job, but he did it fairly well. And there was. So we'll go over this. I'll start this at around minute 2:45, I think, of the speech, and we'll jump around a little bit to take in the highlights. I think it's an important speech because, in a sense, this is like the best attempt you're going to get out there from an American politician these days to try to define Western civilization, to try to articulate what it means, to try to explain the bond between the United States and Europe. So it's worth listening to, but it also demonstrates, I think, as you'll see, it demonstrates just the basic ignorance and just the mythology that is now being created around the state of the world and how awful things are. If not for the change paradigm of Donald Trump. So, all right, let's see if I can get Rubio on screen. There he is. And let us press play, and we can listen to some of this. Let me know if it's too fast.
And it has cost us dearly. In this delusion, we embraced a dogmatic vision of free and unfettered trade, even as some nations protected their economies and subsidized their companies to systematically undercut ours.
So this is the regular trope about free trade. We undermined ourselves because other people subsidized and protected their industries. No, as any decent economist would explain to you, them subsidizing their industries and them protecting their industries hurts them. It actually helps us. We benefit. We didn't undermine. This is not delusional. This is actually. Free trade is good. I have to say it over and over again because I know it's new. It's and everybody out there is against it. So I have to reaffirm it constantly. But Rubio is just spouting the same nonsense, which he didn't believe in. 2018, 2019, when he decided to switch sides and buy in completely into this. I've done many a show. If you're interested in the details of how we benefit from free trade and how we actually benefit when somebody else is being subsidized in their own industry, I have maybe 20 videos online that explain that, in various details. Some of them more detailed, some of them less detailed. Maybe not 20, maybe only 10. I don't know. But there are a lot of them out there. Just put Yaron Brook trade and you'll find them. I've been talking about this since 2016. I've been explaining it in great detail since 2016. Today, we're not gonna get into that detail. If you watch my stuff, you know. And if you don't watch my stuff, then check it out. It's right there in the stack of videos that I have produced. Raises our standard of living, makes allows us to specialize in things we do particularly well. It frees up huge amounts of capital for us. Improves and indeed wages have gone up, labor participation has gone up. Unemployment is way down, and standard of living has gone up. By every measure, the United States is doing better than anybody else in the world, for a sizable economy, and has done better over the last 30 years than anybody else, particularly in the last 15 years or so, much better than anybody else. And we have benefited enormously from trade, even with China. We have benefited, again, standard of living, quality of life, inflation is lower, every measure. Life is better because of the trade we've engaged in. But in terms of explanation of the details of how that works, check out my videos. All right, here we go. So that's delusion number one that the West is engaged in. And he's talking about this is the delusion that came after World War II. He started out with a Cold War and how we won the Cold War, but we entered the delusion of free trade. That's delusion number one. He has a number of these delusions that we've been living under since we won the Cold War.
Shuttering our plants, resulting in large parts of our societies being deindustrialized. Our
societies have now been deindustrialized. The reality is we make more stuff today than we did back then. We make more stuff today than we ever have. The only thing that is true is that we do it with a lot fewer people, primarily because of automation and computers and technology. It's not so much that we've shipped jobs abroad as we've replaced jobs with tech. But what they don't talk about is all the industries we have created because we freed up capital by taking it out of the Rust Belt and invested in Silicon Valley. And at Silicon Valley, we've created much better paying jobs that are far more valuable pretty much by any measure. And yeah, we replaced high-paying programming jobs. We replaced union jobs on an assembly line with high-paying programming jobs. That is a trade-off that is unbelievably valuable, and that partially free trade allowed us to do. We have not deindustrialized. We've got to get that out of our minds. Yeah, we don't make clothing in America anymore. Yay! That's a low margin, low intellectual property, low value product. Let somebody do it in the third world. We design ships. We don't even make ships anymore. Yay! Much rather have our people design them. That's where the real value added is. We don't even make iPhones. But in the United States, iPhones, the most important component, the greatest value added in an iPhone is made in the US. And that's the design, the brainpower. The design, the structure, the features, all the stuff, the components and putting them all together. That's relatively easy once you design it. Let other people do that. It's cheaper, easier. So we are massive beneficiaries, massive beneficiaries of globalization. We're massive beneficiaries of trade, of freer, low tariff trade. I mean, just think about Silicon Valley. And where would NVIDIA be if it had to rely on Intel to actually fabricate its chips? It would be a disaster. It would be way too expensive. Our quality of life, standard of living would be lower. Where would Apple be if it had to rely on building Macs in the United States? They tried that once. It was an unmitigated frigging disaster. We make more stuff than we ever have. We don't make iPhones. We don't make chips. We don't make clothes. But in terms of stuff made, we're at the highest point ever. But we make what we're good at making. We don't make what we're not good at making. That's the beauty of globalization. We can outsource the stuff we're not that good at. We can outsource the lower value products, like the assembly, to other places. So this idea that globalization is bad for America is exact upside down. The United States is the greatest beneficiary of globalization. Not maybe the greatest, maybe other countries have benefited even more, but we are benefited enormously from globalization. So, yes, we don't make everything, that's true, but we never made iPhones. Deindustrialize means lose industry. We never made iPhones, and indeed, it is questionable whether an iPhone would have ever been invented when it was invented, if not for globalization. How many different parts from different countries go into an iPhone? Parts from at least 50 different countries go into the iPhone. If we couldn't source all those products at very, very low cost and then assemble them cheaply, there would have never been an iPhone. The iPhone is a consequence of globalization. All right. So, I mean, yeah, I know I spent a lot of time on this, but there's so many people who are confused about it, so many people that are wrong about it, because all they hear out there is the propaganda of both left and right. There's no disagreement here. They all agree. This is why Biden never lowered Trump's tariffs. This is why it's not for certain at all that a Democratic president will lower the tariffs that Trump has already imposed. You know, the Democrats and Republicans, they use it as a political ping pong. But when it actually comes down to it, the economics of it, they all want tariffs. Not because it's good for America, but because it gives them control. I mean, what Trump loves is to be able to wheel tariffs left and right on this country and that country whenever he feels like, every time he calls a foreign leader to throw them out there. That's what he likes. But they all have a zero-sum mentality. Wow, this is going to take a long time at this pace. We've got a 22-minute talk.
Shipping millions of working and middle-class jobs overseas.
If we shipped millions of working class and middle class jobs overseas, how come we have such a low unemployment rate? We have, by their estimate, by Republican estimates, we have 20 to 30 million illegal immigrants, mostly working in the United States. This unemployment rate is very low. It's as low as it was in the golden 50s. Then where's all the unemployed people whose jobs were shifted overseas? And wages are higher than they've ever been. Income is higher than it's ever been. Standard of living, quality of life, higher than they ever been, by every objective measure you can do. Then where are their jobs that we shipped overseas? Maybe the jobs that went overseas were the low-paying, unproductive jobs. And what we got in return is far better jobs, yes, in services where people sit at a desk, but far better paying, far more productive. Maybe that's the jobs we got in return. So we're net way better off. Way better off. All right. I think this analysis of Rubio's speech is going to take all day.
And handing control of our critical supply chains to both adversaries and rivals.
Now, you could argue that supply chains, giving supply chains to our critical supply chains, and critical for what? Critical for national defense. Supply chains to our adversaries, rivals. I don't know what you even mean by rivals, is a bad thing, and that needs to be dealt with. You don't deal with that but through tariffs. There are other ways to deal with it, but that arguably needs to be dealt with. But that is not the same as everything else he said before that, and that's not a knock against free trade. One, two, three, think you really got to stop commenting and listen, because this comment on the dollar makes no sense. I'll talk about the dollar in a little bit, but the dollar has strengthened for decades. The dollar's been strong all through globalization. The dollar's gotten weaker with tariffs. With Trump has weakened the dollar. But the dollar was super strong up until Trump came into office, super strong. And indeed, over the long run, tariffs will actually increase the value of the dollar. So dollar is strong because, as we'll see later, the dollar is the way in which the whole globe trades.
We increasingly outsourced our sovereignty to international institutions while many nations invested in massive welfare states at the cost of maintaining the ability to defend themselves.
I agree with that 100%. Absolutely.
This, even as other countries have invested in the most rapid military buildup in all of human history and have not hesitated to use hard power to pursue their own interests.
Who's that other than Russia? Our friend? That's part of...
To appease a climate cult, we have imposed energy policies on ourselves that are impoverishing our people,
this I agree
even
completely.
as our competitors
100%.
exploit oil and coal and natural gas and anything else, not just to power their economies, but to use as leverage against our own. And in a pursuit of a world without borders, we opened our doors to an unprecedented wave of mass migration that threatens the cohesion of our societies, the continuity of our culture, and the future of our people.
Really? Now, I get it. Immigration is a real issue in Europe because of Islam. And you know, we can discuss how to deal with that. But really, is American culture in decline because of immigrants? Because of left and right-wing intellectuals who've destroyed what it means to be an American? Is American in decline because of mass migration? This is just collectivist BS. And, of course, by lumping American immigrants to America with immigrants into Europe, where they're not the same. Although even immigrants to Europe, it's questionable whether how big of a problem it really is. What are we doing? We're telling Europeans, yeah, your Islamist threat is our Islamic threat. No, it's not. We don't have an Islamist threat in the United States from immigrants. I mean, maybe a small one at the very margin. But 90+% of our immigrants are not Muslims. 99% of our immigrants, I think, are not Muslims. So what are you talking about? All right.
We made these mistakes together. And now, together, we owe it to our people to face those facts.
There's a lot of we made mistakes together, we are together, we belong together, we are a lot together. This is trying to make up. This is we should be together. The America and Europe, we're the same. We belong together. This is let's jump to this.
And Europe, we belong together.
We belong together. There's a lot.
America was founded 250 years ago, but the roots began here on this continent long before.
True, but
the men who settled and built the nation of my birth arrived on our shores carrying the memories and the traditions and the Christian faith of their ancestors as a sacred inheritance.
So what is the inheritance that bind us? Tradition, memory, and religion. Tradition, memory, and religion. He's got a statement later on we'll get to that is a little better than that, but tradition, memory, and religion. Religion plays a huge part in Rubio's conception of Western civilization, as it does in so many people's, which is a massive mistake. As you know, I think Christianity is the antithesis of Western civilization. It is a force fighting against Western civilization. It is a force undermining Western civilization constantly. But for that, you would have to understand what Western civilization is. You would have to define it. And that is beyond some concretes. That is way beyond what Marco Rubio, or for that matter, any of these could do. It is Europeanness, the traditions of Europe, but really it's Christianity. Ultimately, that's what binds us. Although, note that most of the immigrants coming to America from Guatemala and Honduras and Venezuela and Mexico are as Christian, if not more Christian, than Americans. Most of them are Catholic, Americans predominantly are Protestant, but they're still Christians, supposedly. I assume it's all same. Western civilization is a development in spite of Christianity, not because of it. But note that he has no problem. He wants white Christians, European Christians, not those dark-skinned Christians, although, of course, he is pretty dark-skinned himself, being from Italian and Spanish heritage.
An unbreakable link between the old world and the new. We are part of one civilization, Western civilization. We are bound to one another by the deepest bonds that nations could share, forged by centuries of shared history, Christian faith, culture, heritage, language, ancestry, and the sacrifices.
Know what he doesn't say? Ideas? Philosophy? That has no place in defining Western civilization. It's about, again, traditions. Culture is kind of vague, and they love Western culture. What does it mean? But, you know, I'm all for Western civilization. I'm all for, yeah. But notice that he's grounding Western civilization, not in ideas, but in a people and in a place, in Europe and in America. Whereas in my view, Western civilization is ideas. So today, South Korea, not North, Japan, Singapore, Taiwan, are part of Western civilization, even though their people are not European and white. As Milei brings more freedom to Argentina, Argentina is Western civilization, although, of course, Argentinians are all Europeans. Although I wonder if they emigrate into the United States, where the United States considers them European or dark-skinned Latin Americans. The whole thing is very confusing. Once you introduce race and skin color and geography into what is fundamentally an issue of ideas and culture, you blow up everything. It becomes meaningless. It doesn't add up to anything. That's why Rubio can go from talking about Western civilization and ideas and the founding of America and all of this, to hugging Orban and pretending that Viktor Orban in Hungary, is the epitome of what that means, when Viktor Orban is the antithesis of it all.
Our forefathers made together for the common civilization to which we have fallen heir. And so this is why we Americans may sometimes come off as a little direct and urgent in our counsel. This is why President Trump demands seriousness and reciprocity from our friends here in Europe. The reason why, my friends,
because we love you.
is because we care deeply.
Yeah.
We care deeply about your future and ours. And if at times we disagree...
All right, let's jump a little forward. All right, let's try there.
How we deploy it, these are important questions. They are. But they are not the fundamental one. The fundamental question we must answer at the outset is, what exactly are we defending?
That's right, it is.
Because armies do not fight for abstractions. Armies fight for a people.
Armies do not fight for abstractions. Whoa. So it turns out that what we are defending is not ideas. What we're defending is not some abstract notion of liberty and freedom, and not some abstract notion of shared values. Armies do not fight for abstractions. Give me liberty or give me death. Whoa. No, you can't fight for that. Give me liberty or give me death. When the Nazis marched into battle, they fought for an abstraction. When the communists, the real communists, fought in the name of communism, they fought for an abstraction. We don't, he says. We don't fight for an abstraction. We fight for a people and a place.
Armies fight for a nation. Armies fight for a way of life.
A way of life. A way of life is an abstraction? No, I guess not. I mean, that is awful and ahistorical and a insult to the founders of this country. The founders didn't, I mean, if they were fighting for a nation and a place, if they were fighting for people and a way of life, then they would have stayed British. They were British. They considered themselves British until just before the Declaration, just before the War of Independence. They were British. British, Scot, Irish, they were part of that. They were part of the empire. They loved it. They thought it was great. That was their nation. And if that was it, if it wasn't for abstract ideas, there would have never been a War of Independence. I mean, what an insult to the founders. I mean, it's one of the dumbest lines anybody said in a speech. What did we fight World War II for? A people and a place? We just fought the Brits? Did we really fight for those Frenchmen? Really? I don't think anybody stormed the beaches of Normandy for the sake of the French. We fought for ideas, for freedom. For freedom of our nation, yeah, sure. But freedom, an abstract idea.
And that is what we are defending. A great civilization that has every reason to be proud of its history, confident of its future, and aims to always be the master of its own economic and political destiny.
And this is the thing, he mixes it up with stuff that's good. So you've got awful stuff with good stuff. The next segment is pretty good. But it doesn't match. It just sounds good and inspires, but it doesn't go together. You can't say we don't fight for abstract ideas and then talk about abstract ideas as he's going to.
It was here, in Europe, where the ideas that planted the seeds of liberty that changed the world were born. It was here, in Europe.
And those, by the way, are abstract ideas, if I remember right. And they were fought for.
Where the world, which gave the world the rule of law, the universities, and the science.
Abstract ideas. Rule of law, universities, and scientific revolution. All abstract ideas.
Scientific revolution. It was this continent that produced the genius of Mozart and Beethoven, of Dante and Shakespeare, of Michelangelo and Da Vinci, of the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. And this is the place where the vaulted ceilings of the Sistine Chapel and the towering spires of the great cathedral in
God,
Cologne,
Christianity.
they testify not just to the greatness of our past, or to a faith in God that inspired these marvels. They foreshadow the wonders that await us in our future.
Now, for the most part, that's pretty good. But again, in the context, it's completely contradicts what he said before. It's annoying, it's frustrating, because this speech could have been great. And it's actually not very good. Not just because of its emphasis on religion, but because it keeps meandering into this nationalistic nonsense, a blood and soil and a people and a white civilization. All right, I am going to skip. He goes back to deindustrialization. He talks about that. He then talks about we defeated the godless communists. It wasn't enough to say communist. There's godless in there too. Let me just stay on this for a minute. I think it's here. Maybe not. There is a point where he talks about we need to be proud of our civilization. But let me see. I'm going to skip ahead quite a bit because we're running short. Let's go to there. Let's see what he says here.
No adversary will ever be tempted to test our collective strength.
This
is why we do not want our allies to be shackled by guilt and shame. We want allies who are proud of their culture and of their heritage, who understand that we are heirs to the same great and noble civilization, and who together with us are willing and able to defend it.
Yeah, but the scary part of all of that is that he can't define what the civilization is, what it means, what it represents. Is it just white skin? Is it geography? What exactly is that civilization? Where does it come from? That he cannot define. I mean, where does it come from? I guess in geographic terms he can tell you, but he can't tell you in terms of ideologically where it comes from.
And this is why we do not want allies to rationalize the broken status quo rather than reckon with what is necessary to fix it. For we in America have no interest in being polite and orderly caretakers of the West's managed decline.
It's good.
We do not seek to separate, but to revitalize an old friendship and renew the greatest civilization in human history.
Greatest civilization in human history is absolutely right, non-PC, and really good. All right, let me skip. There's one more segment I want to do, partially because AOC comments on this in a little bit. So,
home may be in the Western Hemisphere, but we will always be a child of Europe.
One of the applause lines he gets.
Our story began with an Italian explorer who whose adventure into the great unknown to discover a new world brought Christianity to the Americas, and became the legend that defined the imagination of our pioneer nation. Our first colonies were built by English settlers, to whom we owe not just the language we speak, but the whole of our political and legal system. Our frontiers were shaped by Scots-Irish, that proud, hardy clan from the hills of Ulster that gave us Davy Crockett and Mark Twain and Teddy Roosevelt and Neil Armstrong.
You know what they mean by Scot-Irish? They mean Irish who are Protestants. There really isn't anything called Scot-Irish, but they keep, I mean, some Scots immigrated to Ireland, but Scot-Irish is kind of a bizarre combination. I don't think they mean those Catholic Irish. They don't like those. It's the Protestant Irish that they
Our great
really
Midwestern
mean.
heartland was built by German farmers and craftsmen who transformed empty plains into a global agricultural powerhouse. And by the way, dramatically upgraded the quality of American beer.
A joke. Only one in the top.
Our expansion into the interior followed the footsteps of French fur traders and explorers whose names, by the way, still adorn the street signs and town names all across the Mississippi Valley. Our horses, our ranches, our rodeos, the entire romance of the cowboy archetype that became synonymous with the American West. These were born in Spain. And our largest and most iconic city was named New Amsterdam before it was named New York. And you know that in the year that my country was founded?
So, yeah, all that is true. We'll get to AOC's comments on the Cowboys later in a little bit because it's a funny comment and a stupid comment. So we've got a few stupid comments by AOC that we'll get to in a little while. But yeah, this is all, you know, you Europeans, you built America. You created this great nation. It's all because of people from Germany and people from this and people from that. You know, there's very little mention of, there's actually zero mention of slavery. He kind of, during the talk, he kind of really whitewashes empire building and kind of hearkens to a kind of a romantic, a romanticism of it and a longing for it. But again, no mention of the Poles and the Eastern Europeans who came. No mention came later and were important to building. No mentions of the Jews. No mentions of blacks. I mean, once you get into this game of ethnic groups, I mean, he didn't. Yeah, I mean, how do you keep going? There's no limit to it, right? And of course, certainly no mention of anybody coming in from south of the border, many of whom we inherited when we took Texas and New Mexico and Arizona and California, which already had populations there of both you know, Indians and Latin Americans, but you know, call them Latin Americans. So none of that matters. It's just these few European things to bond us, to make us whole, to make us together, to bond us together. It's you know, it's the soft and nice version of the Christian nationalist, national conservative messaging. It's the soft and nice and feel good version we should do for the Europeans of the, I think, ultimately racist vision of the new right. Marco Rubio is the soft and cuddly new right. JD Vance is the hard and stern new right. But they all agree. At the heart of America, at the heart of the West is Christianity. At the heart of America, at the heart of the West is being white, i.e. European. Ideas are at best at the margin. They're not that important, particularly when they're embraced by people who are not white. And this is particularly interesting given that, you know, Rubio himself is not exactly, well, I mean, I guess his heritage is European, even though, of course, he's a son of immigrants from Cuba. From the Munich defense conference, Marco Rubio headed to visit two countries, only two countries, Slovakia and Hungary, the two countries whose prime ministers are associated with the new right, who are fans of Vladimir Putin, who are thorns at the side of Europe, and who are part of this Christian nationalist right conservative movement. In Hungary, Marco Rubio basically said, now Orban is facing an election, I think in 2 months, where polls show he's going to lose. Marco Rubio today said that Orban will always receive help from the United States, that the United States is committed to helping to helping Hungary in a financial crisis or any economic challenge, as long as Orban is its leader. In other words, the United States sent a clear message to the voters of Hungary that they will be better off, and the United States is willing to support that with money if Orban wins. So the United States is directly intervening in an election. Of course, Fico and Orban are two of the worst anti-Western civilization leaders in Europe, the most, again, Christian nationalist conservatives. And so you can see where his heart really lies, what it really means. He's not talking about we belong together to the leaders of Germany and France and the Dutch and the Spanish and whatever. He's talking to his allies, the new right. The whole speech is targeted at the AfD and the right wing in France and the right wing all over Europe. It was not targeted at anything else. Orban and Putin are great. Well, you're an anti-American. I mean, if you think Orban and Putin are great, then you hate America. Basically, that's all one can say. As I said, Rubio got what he wanted. I mean, he got standing ovations. This was considered a huge success, and for Rubio. So, all right, let's jump ahead. Let's jump to talking about AOC. AOC had a major appearance in at the Berlin. She had, it looks like two different panels. Kanda, are you back and bugging the chat? Am I going to have to put you in timeout again? Let's take a look at AOC. So we've done the right. Let's do the left. All right. So this is. We'll start with a comment about. Yeah, I mean, I think this is the. We'll start with. I think this is the comment about cowboys. We'll start with that, and then we'll go to some of the other comments in this that are all. This one is the most meaningful one, I think, and it shows both our ignorance and stupidity. But here it is. Let's play this. This is AOC making a foreign policy debut.
You are starting to see the ascent of the right, even in places like Munich. Marco Rubio's speech was a pure appeal to Western culture.
Note how she does tags on Western culture, and the way she says Western culture, as if that's a bad thing, appealing to Western culture. Now, I agree that the way Rubio did it was basically an appeal to blood and soil kind of nationalist racism. But, she's just assuming that everybody gets that. Air quotes, thank you. Air quotes, she does. Air quotes, scare quotes for Western culture, as if such a thing doesn't exist.
My favorite part was when he said that American cowboys came from Spain.
I thought they came from Winnetou, but
I believe the Mexicans and descendants of African enslaved peoples would like to have a word.
That's pretty funny and pretty stupid, because the reality is that first, Mexican culture is very much Spanish. Cowboys are known for riding horses. Horses came from where? Horses came from I mean, there is this image of American Indians riding horses over the plains, and maybe Mexican Indians riding horses over the plains, the indigenous people, but horses came from Europe, Asia, really, ultimately, the plains of Asia. So horses are Asian and came to America via Europe. It's the Spanish who brought horses to America and to the Indians. It is the Spanish who, basic horse riding was a Spanish thing. So to the extent that Mexicans rounded up cattle on horses, they did it because of Spanish influence. So Rubio is actually right if you want to trace it back then. But what exactly did African slaves have to do with being cowboys? How did they have any say or any influence on being cowboys? They were slaves. So I don't know what history she's reading that has American cowboys being created by Mexicans who are not Spanish and slaves, black Americans. I mean, just bizarre nonsense, right? She's just making stuff up. We'll see that again later. There was, there's no there.
On that. I think it's also important to note how
thin
that foundation is.
Thin.
Culture is changing. Culture always changed. Culture for the entire history of human civilization has been a fluid, evolving thing that is a response to the conditions that we live in. And so
what's missing from that definition of culture, which Marco Rubio didn't include either, what's missing in that is ideas, philosophy, thought, principles, ideas. Culture is downstream from philosophy. Culture is downstream from ideas. Culture is downstream from the intellectuals. So yes, it's constantly evolving as ideas evolve. And yes, there are other influences on culture, not just ideas. But ideas are the crucial element that neither Rubio nor AOC understand. And what does she mean it's thin? What is thin? Where does she get this thinness from? Culture, is the Western culture thin? I mean, it's rich and robust, and so much is happening in Europe, whether you understand its causes or not. You can't call Western culture thin. There are a lot of other cultures you can call thin.
They want to take this mantle of culture. At the end of the day, though,
she doesn't know what she's talking about.
It is very
and she knows
thin.
It. It's very thin. She keeps coming back to thinness.
And so the response that we have to have is, again, it's material, it's class-based.
Okay, watch this. This is important. Now, know where she's going with this. So, this is the most explicit I've seen AOC actually articulate her fundamental ideology. This is deep.
We have to have is, again, it's material, it's class-based, it's common interest.
What is material, class-based, common interest? Material, class-based, common interest. Where does that come from? That's straight out of Marx. That's straight out of traditional Marxism. I mean, what I think is happening on the left is they're abandoning woke. They're banning even identity politics to some extent, maybe, all in the name of returning to their roots, returning to a Marxist class-based ideology, the working class. And I think you'll see that more. I think you saw that with Mamdani, who emphasized these kind of issues. And you'll see others focused on this. And I think that it's this, Marxist collectivism, which is really the driving force, or what they're relying on once they realize that woke, intersectionality, and all that stuff, no good. Maybe they're also woke still, but they're de-emphasizing it. They're de-emphasizing it.
There was certainly more openness to what I was saying than probably there would be in years past. We can't underestimate the appeal of going back to these well-worn grooves. A lot of what we talk about when we talk about a class-based internationalist perspective also means ending the hypocrisy towards the global south.
It's a class-based international perspective, global south, all like hearkening back to 30, 40 years ago to a Bernie Sanders. I mean, it's not 30, 40 years ago. Bernie Sanders was here not that long ago. Kind of a Bernie Sanders left. Bernie Sanders was never really woke. Bernie Sanders was always more Marxist than woke. And this is really a hearkening back to their Marxist roots. But Western civilization, it's thin. The other thing you'll notice here, and you'll see in other clips as well, is she can barely speak. Usually, she's fluid. She's on top of things. She's not an idiot. But this is all new stuff. I don't know. She's uncomfortable here. Obviously, she doesn't know how to articulate international affairs. She's ignorant, and this is not a good launch for whatever presidential ambitions she might have. Okay, here's another one.
This isn't just about a presidential election. Personally, I think that the United States has an obligation to uphold its own laws, particularly the leahy laws. And I think that, personally, that the idea of completely unconditional aid, no matter what one does not make sense. I think it enabled a genocide in Gaza, and I think that we have...
So here she's perpetuating the Gaza genocide mythology. She is bought into that. She is repeating it. We don't want unconditional aid to Israel. Again, playing into the Hamas-loving left, which she is part of. So it's not really playing into. That's part of what she's talking about. Just to be clear, there was no genocide in Gaza. We've got an expert on this coming on the show in a few weeks to talk about whether there was a genocide in Gaza, and we'll get into the details of what that is. But she is repeating the myth, the mythology. The myth will continues. Two more clips. Listen to this. This is, try to understand what she's actually saying.
I think what we identify is that in a rules-based order, hypocrisy is vulnerability. And so I think what we are seeking is a return to a rules-based order that eliminates the hypocrisies around when too often in the West we look the other way for inconvenient populations to act out these paradoxes. I think...
What paradoxes? What is she talking about? Now, I know what she's really talking about. She's talking about, the rule-based order was to benefit the global North at the expense of the global South, and allowed the global North to exploit the global South. That's what she's talking about. But she can't actually articulate a sentence. It's blah, 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 word salad nonsense. She's going around in circles. And finally, just to show more of her, just ignorance. I mean, this is kind of ignorance that is somewhat understandable, but still funny. So I thought I'd show it to you. So this is regarding Venezuela.
We look at what happened in Venezuela, for example. It is not a. It is not a remark on who Maduro was as a leader. He canceled elections. He was an anti-democratic leader. That doesn't mean that we can kidnap a head of state and engage in acts of war just because the nation is below the equator. And
she got a big ovation for that, almost as big as Rubio's. Here's the problem, though. Venezuela is above the equator. Above the equator. Here's a map. The equator is that, is this black line just underneath Venezuela. It turns out that both Venezuela and Colombia above the equator. So she needs a geography class, not just a history class, an economics class, and a philosophy class. Just the simple stuff of little things like that, just make her look stupid. So, if she's gonna run for president, she needs. I don't think she is stupid. I've told you in the past. I don't think AOC is stupid. I think she's ignorant, and I think she's evil and wrong and evasive and everything else. But I don't think she's stupid. So I think between now and 2028, she's going to have to brush up on her geography and in international stuff. I think she'll get better on this stuff, but little stuff like this is just fodder for the internet to make fun of you, which it is actively doing right now as we speak. Anyway, those were the speeches. Mexico equals equator? No, that's not true. The equator is below Mexico, way below Mexico. Those are the speeches at the Munich defense conference, big conference. A lot of people go. We saw Rubio representing the American New Right. We saw AOC representing the American far left, old left maybe a return to the old left of Marxism, explicitly Marxist, talking about classes, talking about global South, talking about the things that they used to talk about when they used to talk about old left. You didn't have a use the kind of the new left terminologies that we typically get. Before we leave the topic completely, I want to talk a little bit about this issue of culture that Marco Rubio talks about, Western culture, because Elon Musk posted the following. For a country to survive, there has to be a common culture. Nobody dies to defend a multicultural economic zone, as if that is the option, right? He goes on, American culture, with its English, Scots, Irish origin, is great and worth fighting for. Some may not realize it, but that's why people come here. For the English, Scottish, Irish stuff. That's why they come here. So it is true that the ideas coming out of England, and to some extent Scotland, to a far less extent Ireland, shaped the founding of America. As did ideas coming out of, God forbid, but true, France. Indeed, if you look at the Federalist Papers, the most cited intellectuals in the Federalist Papers, I believe, is Montesquieu, a Frenchman, a French philosopher, thinker of the Enlightenment. And the ideas, even the ideas that were developed in England during this period, and Scotland during this period, were heavily influenced by the thinking that was going on really all over Europe, the thinking of the Enlightenment. Now, Britain, without a doubt, had a much larger share of that than any other country, maybe France. But France and England is really the core of Enlightenment thinking. But that combined with influences from Amsterdam, certainly. You can't imagine an Enlightenment without Amsterdam, if only for the printing presses they had there, where they had relatively freedom to print whatever they wanted, whereas in France and everywhere else there was real censorship, including in England. Without contributions of certain German thinkers, without contributions of really thinkers all over, and the financial support of Catherine the Great, who financially supported many of the French Enlightenment thinkers. I mean, the project of the Enlightenment was a pan-European project. And the ideas, the good ideas that came out of the Enlightenment were pan-European ideas, including, by the way, from the United States. The United States, the intellectuals in the US, people like Benjamin Franklin, were in constant communication with letters with the intellectuals in Europe. But here's the thing about American culture. Not its origins in English, Scottish, Irish. That's just BS. The thing about American culture is that it is based on the great thinkers, on John Locke, but also on the deists in Europe, on, all the way back to Spinoza and Voltaire and many of the French thinkers, Montesquieu and Diderot and others. It's the ideas. The ideas. And then what happened in America, and this is the beauty of American culture, this is what made America great, is they took these ideas and they embedded it into our political institutions, and that embedded it into the culture, and that allowed people to come from anywhere, including Italy, Sicily, let's say, where there was no real enlightenment, or very little. Or Spain, which wasn't a big player in the Enlightenment. Or Poland, same. And often the people coming to America from these places, including all those Germans that Marco Rubio talked about, that people coming to America from all these places, they weren't intellectual. They never read John Locke. They didn't know about the French Enlightenment. They were ignorant farmers. Most of them poor. Uneducated. But because these ideas were now embedded in the institutions of America, in the principles on which it was founded, they were embraced by these people. Not intellectually necessarily, but in spirit. And that's what made America, that's what made what Ayn Rand called the American sense of life. It was that spirit of individualism, the spirit of adventure, the spirit of independence, the spirit of thinking for oneself, independence, a spirit of, of people willing to go out into the wilderness and start something new, or to start an industry in the midst of a populated East Coast. It animated the immigrants who came to America, and those immigrants came from all over Europe. And many of them, most of them, were not English, Scot, Irish. And it didn't matter to anybody that the spirit was English, that the ideas originally, some of them, maybe even a significant number of them, came from England and Scotland. Again, none of them came from Ireland. So they came here, and they embraced the ideas, and they became Americans, and they contributed to American culture, to growing it, to deepening it. And that is also true of the immigrants who came, and the people who are, in a sense, taken over. The Mexicans who came with Texas and came over the border. South Americans who have emigrated here over generations and generations. It was true of the Chinese who came over. Now, we stopped them from coming over with the Chinese Exclusion Act in the 1890s, but out of pure racism, nothing else. So American culture are the true ideas that came from Europe. But they're not part of the color of European skin. They're not associated with particular nations. I mean, if American culture, if everything about America is English, Scottish, Irish, then why the revolution? I mean, we were part of English, Scotland, Ireland. We were part of the United Kingdom. Why not just stay part of the United Kingdom? It's because those ideas were not being implemented by the British Empire. They were not being implemented by the UK. And the founders of this country didn't think, oh, we need an alternative English, Scottish, Irish culture. No, they thought we need to take these ideas seriously and implement them in a new place. And in that sense, make them available to anybody who is willing to live by them. And that's what made America culture. So, right now, all this stuff, there's a White Paper Policy Institute has come out with this statement. 12% of Nicaraguans now live in the United States. 12% of Nicaraguans, of the entire population of Nicaragua, 12% of it live in the United States. That's about 870,000 people. 50% of them arrived between 2020 and 2024. 7% of Nicaraguan population left and entered the United States in just 4 years. 7%. Isn't that stunning? Of course, it ends the post with America needs mass deportation. Well, it turns out that in 1890, about 20% of Irish people in the world lived in or had recently arrived in the United States. 20%. But that's okay, because they're white. In 1910, about 15% of Italians who lived all over the world, 15% of them lived in the United States. This is a feature of our country. We attract people from all over the world, and we attract them in large numbers. And they form communities, and they bring in their cousins and their relatives because life here is better, and people come here because it's better. And the ones who stay home are the risk-averse ones, the ones not willing to take the risk, and that's fine. But the ones who come are the ones who are willing to take risks. So yay for the 12% of Nicaraguans who are willing to leave Nicaragua and come to live in America. Isn't that pretty cool? And remember, in those days, in 1890, the Irish were considered scum. They were considered only part human. When the Irish came to Boston, nobody would hire them. There's that movie. What's that movie with Tom Cruise about the Irish immigrants into the United States? I forget. The name of it. God, I can think of themes, and the same with Italians. And Far and Away. Thank you, Ian. Far and Away. Watch Far and Away. It's a good movie. Watch it, and you'll see how the Irish were treated when they came to America, or the Italians. And 15% of Italians globally live in the United States. And you know what they brought with them? They brought the mafia. These were violent immigrants. A very small part of them. But of course, the people who hated them emphasized that. Today, as of right now, 86% of all people in the world who identify themselves as Irish, 86% don't live in Ireland. They live in the United States. They live in the United States. Now, this is based on self-identification, so I don't think it's based on 23andMe genetic stuff, but it's about 32.4 million people are from Irish descent. They live in the United States. There's a lot less than 32.4 million people living in Ireland. Is that a problem? Does anybody care? So what? And of course, what does it mean to be from Ireland? Is that the Protestant Irish or the Catholic Irish? Does it matter? Does anybody care about that? Northern Ireland, Southern Ireland? Irish people who originally came from England or from Scotland, Scotch Irish, English Irish, or Irish that can go back many, 1,000 years on the same Irish soil. Do we care? Does it matter? Only if you're a frigging racist. So no, America is not a culture based on an ethnic group. It's influenced by the ideas developed by certain people at a certain time. And not all people. And not ideas that necessarily were embraced by all people. This is a country founded on the ideas of great intellectuals. They happen to be British and French and Scottish. But those ideas would have never come into being if not for ideas that were previously generated in France and in Amsterdam and in Germany and other places. God, how do we eradicate just this ethnocentric, racist perspective on the world? This tribalism, which is eating this country and this world and is going to destroy Western civilization. Western civilization is the negation of tribalism. Western civilization is reason and individualism. the negation of Christianity, mysticism, and collectivism. That's Western civilization. Reason, individualism, political freedom. That's what it means. And every time we go to ethnic groups, nationalities, national origins, heritage Americans, we are undermining and destroying the very, very, very concept of what it means to be an American, what America means, and what Western civilization means. We're undermining Western civilization in the name of supposedly defending it. All right, talk about destroying Western civilization in America. You remember when? Biden. Hard to remember Biden's name. He's so obnoxious. I acknowledge racism has no limits. 1, 2, 3 things say acknowledge racism towards white. Yeah, there's racism towards white. Stop it. The way to stop racism towards white is stop being a racist if you're white. You're only encouraging it. You want to stop racism? Start with yourself. Start with the way you talk. Start with the people you support. Start with the politicians you have influence on. You want to stop racism? Stop being a racist. Yeah, there's lots of racism in the world. Racism against whites, against blacks, against Jews, against every ethnic group out there. But when you identify America as Irish, English, Scottish, you're playing into the hands of the racists. So you want to get rid of racism, stop playing into the hands of racism. Stop being a racist yourself. Stop identifying as white. I don't know what that means. White identity is bullshit. So stop it. It's always excuses. Oh, they're more racist than I am. Well, yeah, okay, so what? Stop being a racist. You're all a bunch of racists, from my perspective. Left, right, and much of the center. A bunch of ethno-racists. Individualism. Judge individuals based on their character, based on their ideas, based on their actions. And remember that not that long ago, Irish, Italians, Spaniards weren't even considered Europeans. I mean, they were considered Europeans, weren't even considered white. They were non-white Europeans. Anyway, you remember when Biden sent his bureaucrats to Twitter and to Facebook to tell them that they had to play by the rules vis-a-vis COVID. In other words, try to try to get information about, and people freaked out. Censorship. And it's amazing to me that, and it was terrible. It was one of the worst things, maybe the worst things the Biden administration did, undermining the First Amendment by trying to limit what could and couldn't be published. Not the platforms making decisions. I'm all for and will defend the platform's right to make decisions about what to publish and what not to publish. They can platform or deplatform anybody they want. They're private property. Government, stay out. But if you take that stand with regard to what Biden did, you've got to take the stand now with regard to what Trump is doing. So it turns out that the U.S. Department of Homeland Security has expanded its efforts to identify Americans like me and some of you who oppose immigration and custom enforcement in recent months, sending tech companies, including Google, Reddit, Discord, and Meta, who owns both Facebook and Instagram, hundreds of administrative subpoenas, which consist of legal requests for names, email addresses, telephone numbers, and other identifying data behind social media accounts that track or notice this, or criticize ongoing immigration operations by the Trump administration for government officials and tech employees privy to the requests have told the New York Times. And it turns out that Reddit, Meta, and Google have voluntarily complied with some of the requests, identifying details of users critical of the Immigration and Customs Enforcement of ICE. They have my name. Oh my God. I think they know me already. If you don't find this unbelievably scary, if you don't think this is as worse or worse than what Biden did with Twitter and Facebook and others, then I don't know what's wrong with you guys. This is authoritarianism on steroids. This is a massive violation of free speech. This is a police state. You can't criticize the government. Don't criticize the authorities. Don't criticize law enforcement. So if one day there's no show and I disappear, you'll know why. ICE has been at my door. I mean, it's scary. This is real beginning. You know, there are lists now of people critical of the government. Now, it's true that in the 50s and 60s and 70s, J. Edgar Hoover at the FBI used to keep such lists of un-American activities and un-American activists, well, how they defined it. But here you go. And if you think this is untrue, then you are dreaming. This is exactly consistent with Trump, with this administration, with their modus operandi. They don't care about your freedom of speech. They have no respect for freedom of speech. And if you oppose Trump, he's already called so many people opposing him treasonous and have tried to prosecute them. So this is not misinformation. This is not misdirected information. This is the real thing. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if anybody objects to this. All those people who yelled out at Biden, I wonder if they're gonna get upset about this. Probably not. As long as we get the left, we don't care. All right, we're going to do this the next few pretty quickly. We've already gone an hour, 20 minutes. A long show. Don't forget the deal we have, right? $250 an hour. We're going to go into the third hour, I think, today. So we need to catch up here to at least get... somebody's already diagnosed me with TDS. That's the response. Trump is collecting names of people who oppose Trump, and I have TDS. All right. That is pretty funny. All right, let's talk about the dollar. There is a lot of talk constantly. The dollar is in decline. It declined last year. It's declining a little bit this year. It's going down in value relative to other currencies. The dollar is not going to be used as a global currency. BRICS are coming out with their own currency. The world is going to go on a gold standard. The dollar is no longer going to be used for international transactions. This is the end of the dollar. It's just a question of any day now. It's going to collapse completely. All of it gone. I mean, you hear this hysteria really all the time. And while the value of the dollar has gone down, it has come down from peak values. It was very expensive relative to other currencies recently. And the reality is that in spite of the fact that the dollar has come down, the dollar still dominates international transactions. Give you a few stats. The US dollar's portion of international transactions via SWIFT is up to 50.5%. It was, it's been at these levels for a long time. It dipped a little bit in 2024, but it's back up to its 2023 numbers. Just over 50% of all transactions over SWIFT network are in dollars. This is, by the way, up 11.6% over the last 4 years. So if the dollar is declined, why are people using dollars to transfer money more than ever? The euro is in the second place with 21.9%, followed by the British pound at 6.7%, the Canadian dollar at 3.4%, and the Japanese yen at the Japanese yen is also at 3.4%. Just for comparison's sake, the Chinese yuan, which so many people are saying is going to replace the dollar, really, is at 2.7%. And that's been basically flat for 3 years. So, that's one measure. But you can look at a bunch of measures other than SWIFT. If you look at global foreign exchange transactions, about 88 to 90% of all foreign exchange transactions worldwide involve the dollar. 88 to 90%. Share of global trade invoicing. 80 to 90% of global oil trade is still invoiced in US dollars, in spite of all the chatter about BRICS or whatever. Even trade between non-US countries is usually done in dollars. Some estimates suggest that between 50 to 60% of all global trade invoices are denominated in dollars. So, I hate to break it to you guys, but while the dollar is declining, primarily because people are afraid that the U.S. is withdrawing from the world, and U.S. is withdrawing from trade and withdrawing from just involvement in the world, and that is likely to continue. The actual reality is that the dollar is still dominant because there's nothing to replace it with. Not because it's great, but because it's the best. It's better than anything else. Now, it's true that fewer foreign reserves are denominated in dollars and more in gold, but that's because gold has gone up so much. So if you bought a certain amount of gold and it just went up in value, then poof, a proportion of your reserves are now higher in gold, even if you bought no additional gold. So, that is just a quick one. I just noticed that in terms of the dollar. Don't panic. Part of what we do at the Yaron Brook Show here is just bring a little reality to the hysteria out there about all kinds of things. The world is not as bad as sometimes even I make it out to be. It's just not as bad. All right, quickly on Iran. I mean, there are basically two stories are dominating right now with regard to Iran. One is the United States continues to transfer massive quantities of military resources to the Middle East. When the Ford arrives in the Middle East, about a third of the U.S. Navy will be in the Middle East. I think a big chunk of the U.S. Air Force, particularly refueling airplanes, but also F-35s and F-16s and F-15s, are now in the Middle East. Or in Europe, in very short distance from the Middle East. I don't know what percentage of air defense systems that the United States has is now in the Middle East, but it's a big percentage. There's a massive concentration of U.S. arms in the Middle East, all targeted at Iran. Now, that would suggest, think about the billions of dollars spent on getting the arms there. This is not cheap. So think about that configuration. Now, I think they're overdoing it. I think, as usual, the military experts think that Iran Iran is constantly, its strength is overestimated. They think Iran can launch a regional war. They think that Iran can deliver significant damage to Israel and to American allies. Iran launched about 600 missiles towards Israel. 90% of them were knocked down. 90 to 95% of them were knocked down. Yes, they did some damage and some people died, but nothing as compared to what Israel inflicted on Iran, and nothing as compared to what Iran promised the damage would be. If the United States, with the U.S. capabilities and its B-2 bombers, were engaged, many of the missiles would never get off the ground because they would be bombed in the silos in which they are being stored. Iran has about 2,000 ballistic missiles, so if they launched all 2,000, with all the resources of air defense systems today in the air, yes, they would do some damage. But they would run out of missiles very, very quickly. If they launched 2,000 all in one day, it would be gone. But they don't have enough launchers to do that. And as the U.S. and Israel destroyed all their launches, this would be a quick war. There's no long war here. But everybody, all the commentators, in the amount of emphasis is the idea that the United States is going to be involved in a long war with Iran. There is no long war here. As soon as the United States establishes air dominance over Iran, which shouldn't take it more than 24 hours, Israel did it in 24 hours, then they can bomb anywhere. They can kill pretty much anyone. They can dominate the airspace. They can use cruise missiles, ballistic missiles. They can use airplanes. They can, B-2 bombs. They can do what they want. And this has always been the fact, the reality. Now, it's true that, Trump overhyped the bombing of the nuclear facilities. But that's just because Trump is Trump. It's not because he couldn't have kept on bombing until literally they were shredded completely. It would have taken another few hours. But there was literally nothing to stop the Americans from destroying whatever they want to destroy in Iran, whatever they want. They will have free reign. They can take their time. There's zero reason why this should be long, or zero reason why the United States should suffer any casualties. The biggest threat, overwhelmingly the biggest threat, is the Iranians trying to block the Straits of Hormuz. But you have the U.S. Navy is right there. The U.S. Navy is, 1,000 times better than anything the Iranians can put in the sea? They can put mines. I think we have mine clearing technology. They will put little boats trying to blow up, suicide bombing type stuff. Okay, we could blow them out of the water before they even reach. They have drones. The United States has anti-drone technology. It's trying it out in the desert in El Paso. Iran has nothing, zero, zilch, nada, that can stand up to America beyond a few hours, maybe a few days. So the fear and the hype is exaggerated and ridiculous. And unfortunately, I think this fear and hype is preventing Trump from actually pulling the trigger, because I think he's buying into it. Oh, he doesn't want to get into a quagmire. He doesn't want to get, sucked into a lengthy campaign in Iran. There's zero reason why it should be lengthy. Zero. Remember the 12-day war with Israel? Iran was incapacitated. Now, they sent those ballistic missiles, and many of them got through, and that was unfortunate, but they were going to run out at some point. Only so many missiles they have. And if you bomb the manufacturing facilities for the missiles, they can't build anymore. They got 2,000. How many days can they do 2,000? In the meantime, you blow up their launches. They can't even launch. It's just, I don't know. The people who make military predictions and claim to understand military in the media and where I see are so ignorant. The bias is always to way overestimate the ability of evil regimes. Way overestimated. Okay, so that's one. We're building up this massive military force in the Middle East. Second, though, We're negotiating with the Iranians. The Iranians today are meeting with the International Atomic Energy Commission people. Tomorrow, the United States is meeting with them. Iran has put together an agreement by which they reduce their, enrichment of uranium by a certain amount, and they cut a nuclear deal or something. But at the same time, they give America all kinds of economic benefits. They've learned what really ticks for Donald Trump. They're going to promise him American investment in energy and mining, and they're going to buy a lot of Boeing jets. They want to buy Boeing jets. They might even want to buy F-35s. They're going to make this all about economics. The Deputy Director of Economic Diplomacy under the Iranian Foreign Ministry told the Iran state-run Fars news agency, quote, "For the sake of an agreement durability, it is essential that the U.S. also benefits in areas with high and quick economic returns. Common interests in the oil and gas fields, joint fields, mining investments, and even aircraft purchases are included in the negotiations." Unbelievable. So Trump will sell out the Iranian people who he promised to protect. He did. He promised it. Not me. He did. He'll sell out the Israelis, and he'll sell out America for some short-term economic benefit. I don't know, but certainly that seems to be on the table. Those are the two alternatives. Hard to tell what exactly would happen, but Iran has learned from the Ukraine and from Venezuela what makes Trump tick. From Russia, what makes Trump tick is these kind of deals. All right, last, just quickly, Doctors Without Borders has Doctors Without Borders, this generally leftist, pro-Palestinian, organization, has now announced that it has suspended all non-critical services at one of Gaza's largest hospitals. Now, why would they do that? Because they were alleging that the facility was being used by armed men. Now, for years and years and years, really decades, they've been ignoring that fact. They've been pretending it's not so. Finally, they're acknowledging the fact that hospitals in the the Gaza Strip are being used by Hamas. And for whatever reason, they've changed their policy and are now withdrawing, vindicating everything Israel has said about these hospitals from day one. Good. Well, it's better. It's better they do it now than not at all, right? And I wonder if other people claiming for 2.5 years that the Israeli assertions were untrue about Hamas using hospital, I wonder if they changed their mind and stopped calling it propaganda. Right? Of course, the Gazans are really upset. Really upset. This has been going on forever. Right? All right. That, my friends, is the news for this Monday, February 16th. Thank you all for listening. I really, really appreciate it. You guys have so far been quite generous on the Super Chat front, so thank you for that. We're only $27 away from our second hour goal. Of course, we're going to go into the third hour, so there'll be a third hour goal, but we're doing really, really well in terms of the timing, so thank you. I appreciate that. Remind you that if you want to support the show, you can do so on a monthly basis, regular monthly basis, which is the preferred way, on patreon.com or on PayPal. Just go to patreon.com and put your Yaron Brook Show and become a monthly supporter. That'd be great. So that'd be good. Let me remind you of our sponsors. The Ayn Rand Institute's got a conference in Porto. I will be there in April 18th, the weekend of April 18th. Porto is in Portugal, for those who are not sure. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's a great city. I hope you all come over. And if you're anywhere in Europe, please come. We're going to have a good time. So feel free to fly over. Ryanair flies into Porto. You can also fly through Lisbon. It's pretty easy to get to Porto, and it's a great city. You can apply for a scholarship if you're under 34, or you can pay and come as an adult. And if you pay, you get a discount as a listener to Yaron Brook Show. The discount code is 26YBS10, 26YBS10. The application for the scholarship and all of that information is on aynrand.org/start here. Alex Epstein is a sponsor of this show, and he is, of course, the foremost authority in the world on all things fossil fuel, energy, electricity, the grid. Just a master communicator. You'll learn so much from him if you follow him. alexepstein.substack.com. You will become a better communicator and better thinker about these issues. Hendershot Wealth, Hendershot with 2 T's, hendershotwealth.com/YBS, offer products that can save you a lot of money in capital gains taxes, particularly if you have an appreciated stock, a large position in stocks that you intend to liquidate, and you're facing a tax liability, you're going to sell a business. Check out the interview I did with Robert Hendershot on my channel on YouTube, on the playlist for sponsors. Otherwise, just go to hendershotwealth.com/YBS to get more information. And finally, Defenders of Capitalism, Michael Williams, defendersofcapitalism.com. Michael Williams is a project that I work on with him. Feel free to check it out. Check out Defenders of Capitalism. Let us know what you think. An important project to defend capitalism, both morally, economically, politically, historically, from every aspect. And a proper capitalism, real capitalism, not the pretend capitalism so many people talk about. Those are sponsors. I'll remind you again that we are, let's see, where are we? We are getting closer. We're only $15 away from our second hour target. So please come in with stickers and with Super Chat questions. Super Chat questions are great because then I answer what you want me to talk about. And don't forget Patreon. Oh, lastly, but not leastly, but importantly, I want to remind you I'll be in London. And while I'm in London, I'm going to do a seminar on capitalism, what it is, how it functions, why it's important, what the morality is, what philosophy is it based on, really a deep dive into capitalism. It's going to be on February 28th. It's in less than 2 weeks. Please sign up sooner rather than later. Don't wait till the last minute. I need to get a room that fits the number of people coming, and I need to know how many people are coming, and I need to know now, right? Soon, this week. So please, if you intend to come, please sign up. Please come. It's going to be a blast. It's from 1 to 5, so it's 4 hours. It's not a quick lecture and gone. And we'll also go out to dinner afterwards so we can hang out and just chat. So join me in London, February 28th from 1 to 5 p.m. Central London. It'll be in Central London somewhere. So easy to get to if you use the tube, the underground. And you can check it out at Yaron Brook Show, yaronbrookshow.com. And go down the page where the events are. You will find the event, and then you can click on the link there to get to the specific information on an Eventbrite page. It's also easy to pay and all of that. I've also put the link below in the chat. If you're watching on YouTube, you can get it on YouTube. But other than that, go to my webpage and you can find it there. Are there enough people in New York City for me to do a seminar like that? If there is a group that is willing to kind of guarantee that there'll be a minimum number of people to do a seminar on capitalism in New York City, I would be happy to do it in New York City. Maybe I'm going to be in New York City in June. Maybe we can do it in June. That would be fun. So let me know. Let me know if there's interest. Real Spark says, come to New York City. Is Real Spark willing to put 300 pounds sterling, or almost $500, for participation in a seminar like that? If yes, then that's the beginning. But I don't do it for free. Time is money. Time is money. All right, let's see. Let's turn to our super chat. I just got a $50 one from Silvanos, which I'll read, and then we'll go to the other super chats. He says, "Hello, Yaron. Today is my birthday. Happy birthday, Silvanos, and thank you for all the support all these years now. So really appreciate the support. Thank you. Have a great birthday." He says, "Thanks for making my life better with your news coverage. My pleasure. And thank you for supporting the news coverage and making my life better that way. It's a trade, win-win. It's fantastic. And again, have a great birthday. And yeah. All right, let's see. Not Your Average Algorithm has a $100 question. Thank you, Not Your Average Algorithm. Really appreciate the support. This is great. Part one, a two-part question, so really $120. The most dangerous group in any society is overeducated, underpaid people. Okay? People who went to school for these useless advanced degrees and had been told by their parents that they're entitled to a job which will allow them to live in New York City or San Francisco. It didn't work. So what you get is this pathological resentment and desire to knock down the system. We saw this in Tsarist Russia and during the French Revolution. They're articulate, they're capable of organization. So I don't know if I completely buy that. It's certainly, they are an important element in whatever we're talking about. But look, the communist revolution in Russia was, a lot of it wasn't all educated people. A lot of the peasants joined in. A lot of the poor people joined in. The same is true of the French Revolution. French Revolution was not just a revolution of intellectuals, not just a revolution of underpaid, overeducated people. Indeed, I don't know what that even means in the context of either Russia or France. And even today, it is a mixture of corrupt intellectuals, kind of the left, as you say, underpaid, overeducated. But at the same time, what are we talking about? Why am I can't read? What's this? Anyway, at the same time, it's also maybe people who are overpaid and who have union jobs and are overpaid and think that they have a right to these jobs, who are offended by immigrants, offended by change, scared of change, whether it's AI or immigration, and are rising up against. So again, I think what you're seeing on the left and on the right is that what is going on today in the most dangerous groups in our societies today are people who are pissed off at the world, who reject America in the name of bad ideas, in the name of, many of them don't even know the ideas in which they're doing this. Many of them are doing it in the name of some racist ideology, in the name of a mythology around what America was, in the name of, so much of this is dependent on the mythology around how badly the United States is doing and how badly Americans are doing and how people are making less money and life was better in the 50s and all that crap. So much of the bad stuff happening today is dependent on that. But I agree, at the end of the day, the most dangerous people are the intellectuals. And many of those intellectuals are overeducated, underpaid, but many of those intellectuals are overpaid. Many of those intellectuals are not underpaid. They're actually paid quite well. Paul Krugman, for example. I don't know, Patrick Deneen on the right. They're intellectuals that are paid well. So the most dangerous groups in our society are the people that the people that hold bad ideas. And the worst of them are the people who promulgate bad ideas. And that can happen because they're overeducated. It could be happen because they're just educated with wrong ideas. And it could be that they're well paid. Look at Silicon Valley and how it's turned into, and to some extent has been for a while now, this hub of bad ideas, where the bad ideas of the left or bad ideas of the right. It's not because they're underpaid. Not because they're underpaid at all. So it's just bad. All right. Let's see. Richard. Thank you, Richard. Haven't seen you in a while. One of the funniest parts about the protectionist crowd is how few of them acknowledge the kind of energy demand that would be necessary. China doubled U.S. grid capacity in the last decade and on track to double it again in the next decade. That's right. I mean, even with with now the emphasis in the United States on all this AI data centers, we don't have the electricity to run them. We're going to have to massively increase our grid and massively increase the amount of energy that we produce. And that is going to require massive deregulation. It's going to require probably nuclear. It's going to require a lot of fossil fuels. And, I think this administration at least has a pro-energy policy. It's stopped the nonsense from the Biden administration and the left with regard to trying to regulate out of existence fossil fuels. But on the other hand, they're like subsidizing coal. You shouldn't have to subsidize anything. Just let the market reign. Just get rid of the regulations. Get rid of the controls. Let markets work. And we will get the best, most productive energy sources available. But yeah, people have no clue on how much energy we would actually need to produce and to do all the AI stuff that they want. Never mind bring manufacturing back to America, as if that is even a possibility. All right, Michael says, you mentioned yesterday the asbestos companies should not have been sued because they didn't know their products were harmful. But isn't it their responsibility to ensure their product isn't harmful before unleashing it on the public? No, absolutely not. Now, if they were negligent, that is, if you could show that there was information, they ignored it, or that they should have been worried, so they should have tested it. But no, buyer beware, guys. You do not have a responsibility to put out a product that is safe beyond what you know, beyond the existing scope of knowledge. Imagine if before we started burning coal in the 19th century in the Industrial Revolution, we said, well, we don't know what the negative consequences of coal are going to be. It might be harmful. So let's spend the next 50 years testing it. And then after we test it, then we'll introduce coal. Think of how much poorer we will be today. I mean, if people didn't know asbestos hurt you, and people didn't know that there was the potential for asbestos to hurt you any more than any other product. Now, if once they discovered that asbestos hurt you, they continued to produce it without a disclaimer, then you can sue them. But if once they found out that it was harmful, they either stopped producing it or put in safety requirements or let people know about what's going on, then they're just not liable. You are not liable for damage you unknowingly, where you couldn't even know if you wanted to, unknowingly do. You can't be responsible for what you don't know. You can only be responsible for what you know. It's absolutely not your responsibility to ensure the product isn't harmful. If you include in harmful all the potential harm that you don't know about. That's called the precautionary principle, which shut down all innovation. I mean, imagine if before the first airplanes were allowed to fly, you had to prove that they would never crash and nobody would ever die and they would never do any harm. But they do crash sometimes. They do harm sometimes. You can't make that the standard. It's only if you know there's real danger and you don't disclose that danger, are you liable? Thank you, Michael. All right, Richard, another $50. Thank you, Richard. I've seen a lot of mainstream podcasts that discuss nuclear energy, and most of them interviewed Alex Epstein. Build America caucus, mostly Democrats, supports permitting reform. Are you optimistic about federal bills for energy permitting reform? Yeah, I mean, I am. There really does seem to be a bipartisan understanding now, and to a large extent, this is because of Alex's work, that our civilization depends on energy, that we cannot just rely on unreliable solar and wind, that we need to invest in, clean, reliable energy, and the most clean, reliable energy there is nuclear. So I think there's growing support for that. I think as a consequence that, yes, you will get a lot more permitting. I noticed today, I think, that they flew, for the first time, mini nuclear reactors, a small nuclear reactor from California to Utah on a C-114, 117, something like that, 170, maybe, a cargo plane for installation in Utah to start testing, where they want to take them live on January 4th this year, 250th anniversary. So I think there's going to be much, much more investment and much, much more approval, many, many more approvals of various types of nuclear technologies out there. There really seems to be support for it. And again, I think a lot of it is a consequence of Alex Epstein's work. Michael, could AI come up with a theory of relativity? No, it can't. Or objectivism? No, certainly not. Or does that level of induction require free will? I think all of that requires more than it requires the ability to integrate in a way in a guided process by a consciousness that recognizes cause and effect and can induce. I don't think a machine can induce. Machines cannot induce. They can find similarities and differences, but they can't find causal relationships. They can find correlations. They can't find causation. Causation still requires human consciousness. So no, they couldn't do any of those things. Not to say one day what we call artificial intelligence, an intelligence that human beings put together won't be able to do that. But it would require consciousness, and we're a long, long way from that, a long way from that. It's code, that's all it is. AI is just code, and it's code that's running statistical algorithms. It's doing regressions, kind of, not really, but it's kind of doing regressions, correlation analysis. It can't do causality. It can't think. It can't discover new knowledge. It can discover new relationships, not new knowledge. Christian, I love Israel and the Jewish people, but today I was accused of anti-Semitism because I got angry at the Haredim after the riots in Bnei Brak and said that they must have their welfare cut to defang them. What do you think? Oh, I am so anti-Haredim. I despise the people. I despise everything about them. And they should be cut from welfare 100%. They should get no welfare. Certainly, if they don't serve in the Israeli army, they should get no welfare. And the funding of their schools should be cut. They do a disservice to Israel, and they're mystics. They're primitive, barbaric mystics. And if that makes me an anti-Semite because I criticize a group of tribalistic, primitive Middle Ages mystics, then it's stupid. That's not anti-Semitism, right? It's just I'm clearly criticizing a narrow group within for reasons that have nothing to do with the fact that they're Jews. It has everything to do with the fact that they are religious nuts. Don't like religious nuts. Of any denomination. Religious nuts are out. These are the ultra-Orthodox Jews. Yeah. Richard, do you know what it is like to work a CDO trading desk in 2005? Also, any recommendation for movie shows that positively portray banking and finance? No, I don't know what it was like to work a CDO, collateralized debt obligations desk in 2005. It was probably very exciting and a lot of money and a lot of stupidity that is not really thinking about the risks being taken on, not really thinking about the leverage that one was using, not thinking about what could happen if real estate prices ever went down. They discovered that in 2007-8, but it must have been exciting in 2005. Movie shows. I mean, Other People's Money is the obvious. I've recommended it many times. Other People's Money is the best movie on finance ever made, I think. What else? I mean, there's a TV show right now called Industry about finance in London, about an investment bank in London. I don't think it's a particularly positive one, but it's interesting. I watched the first 2 seasons. There are 4 seasons. I'm going to watch the 3rd and the 4th as well. But it's not particularly positive. There are no positive portrayals. Very few. I'm trying to think if there are any others. I mean, Other People's Money is the real exception. No TV shows that I know of. Shazbot, quote from Groundskeeper Willie in The Simpsons. Okay. Brothers and sisters, unnatural enemies, like Englishmen and Scots, or Welshmen and Scots, or Japanese and Scots, or Scots and other Scots, darn Scots, they ruined Scotland. It's really good. The Scots have a problem. They're also really good. They contributed a lot to our lives. The Scottish Enlightenment was very powerful. But they also, did a lot of damage. David Hume did a lot of damage in addition to doing good. His skepticism was not good for philosophy. Richard, is there any argument for keeping some sort of government oversight over nuclear power because of non-proliferation concerns? It seems like that would be limited to simply licensing fuel enrichment and purchases. What do you think? Yeah, I think something like that should be. There should be also some kind of certification that you're keeping nuclear material safe, that it can't be stolen easily. But yes, we want to make sure that refining is refining for commercial use and not for any kind of military use. There need to be some basic, simple procedures, certifications, we call them regulations, that are monitoring the industry so that there's no abuse on the one hand, but there's no national security risk associated with it. I'd have to know more about what's involved. Remember that a lot of the modern, new, miniaturized, these small nuclear power plants don't even use anything that could be turned into military grade. So there is no national security risk associated with them. And in those cases, there should be nothing. Right? So it all depends on the specific technology and whether you can make a national security argument or not. Richard says, who's the most innovative financier since Michael Milken? Does anyone even come close? Oh, I don't know. Probably, I mean, I don't know of one person. I mean, obviously, the market has only grown in sophistication. CDOs, a good example. CDOs that you mentioned earlier, collateralized debt obligations, are amazing instruments, and somebody innovated that. But it's not like Milken, where the innovation kept going and kept getting used in different ways, and he was involved in so much of it. So it doesn't go to credit of any particular person. A lot of what private equity does is there's been a lot of innovation there. But again, I don't know any particular individual responsible for it. There's a lot of stuff that's happened to get around Dodd-Frank and to get around regulations that is attributable probably to certain individuals, but I don't think there's anybody that even comes close to Milken in the impact, the positive impact, and engagement that he had. Now, I might be wrong. I've been out of the field of studying finance for a long time, and maybe I missed something. I mean, Warren Buffett is great, but Warren Buffett's not an innovator. Warren Buffett is just a great investor, but he's not an innovator. Milken was an innovator. He changed the world. Warren Buffett didn't really in any significant way. Jonathan said, rest in peace, Robert Duvall. Yeah, Robert Duvall died earlier today, just before the show started. The announcement came out. Robert Duvall, of course, from the Godfather movies, but had a wide-ranging career, both on stage and in the movies. Was an excellent actor, and somebody who seemed to do a good job no matter what kind of role they were put into. Somebody said Jamie Dimon. I don't think Jamie Dimon compares to Michael Milken. Jamie is a good CEO. He's done a good job. But I don't know that he's innovated dramatically. He's run the largest bank in the United States well, which he should get credit for. But is he of Michael Milken's stature? I don't think so. You'd have to make the case. Again, John Allison's a great banker, maybe the greatest banker of the 20th century, of the latter part of the 20th century. But again, in terms of innovation, in terms of changing the world of finance, Milken stands out. John's a better man, I think, but I don't know if I don't think had quite the same impact as Milken did in finance. John had an impact in other areas like objectivism. Clark, has anything you read by Aristotle blown you away the same way Ayn Rand passages have? Well, I read Aristotle after Ayn Rand, so I think the parts that blow me away is when I see similarities and I go, wow, this is 2,000 years ago. But no, and part of it is I haven't really delved into Aristotle in the same way I did into Ayn Rand. I haven't studied him in the same way. But yeah, you read passages and they're amazing and so insightful, and you go, how did the world not pivot once this was all done? And why did we get Christianity and the Dark Ages and all that? Why didn't Aristotle just take off? James, why? And look, Ayn Rand is much easier to read too, much easier to understand. James says, why is the skyline in Dubai so nice? Do they rank high on economic freedom index? I mean, there's a sense in which they do, right? It's very deregulated. The taxes are very low, but everything is controlled by the monarch, by the head of Dubai. It's an authoritarian state. All of that could change in an instant. There's no recognition of rights. There's a decent system of law and contracts, but it's at the whim of the sheikh, the whim of the dictator. So I don't trust it. The skyline in Dubai is amazing because they've got oil money and natural gas money, and they have spent a lot of that money on building a beautiful skyline, and they've hired the best architects in the world to build it for them. In many ways, It's a skyline they don't deserve. It's a skyline that doesn't match the culture, the essential characteristics of the culture, which are Islamic. But, you know, they've got a lot of money from oil, a lot of money from oil and shipping oil and refining oil. And that money has gone into building one of the most beautiful skylines in the world. It's not because of economic freedom, that skyline. It's because of oil wealth. Woman says, Vivek is presidential as Ramaswamy is president candidate 2028. I doubt it. He's running for governor of Ohio in 2026. He'll be a new governor. I think he'd probably wait until 2032. I doubt Republicans would vote for him. He's after all Indian. Republicans have turned very anti-Indian. They're not interested in foreigners. I don't think they want a foreigner as president, an Indian as president, so they don't want them as programmers, never mind as president. I find it hard to believe Vivek can win a Republican primary. I hope he wins in Ohio. I hope he moves away from the populism he gravitated towards during the primaries when he ran against Trump, and focuses more on economic freedom, economic liberty, and on the ideas that he mentioned in his speech in Turning Point, which I showed you part of. Asaf says, low unemployment is because we changed the way we do statistics. No, it's not. It's just not. So, it's BS that the real problems in the world, and it's just the statistics are lying to us. It's just not true. Richard, would repealing the Williams Act, which created tender offer requirements and public disclosure after buying 5% of a company's shares, have allowed faster restructuring and growth in the 70s and 80s? Also, are poison pills legitimate at all? Yes, I mean, the Williams Act slowed down the ability for hostile takeovers to happen and for a change of ownership and for the kind of restructuring of American business to happen. One of the things that Drexel and Michael Milken did was find ways around that. But yes, ultimately, the Williams Act favors incumbent managers and does everything to protect them. And that's not what you want in the dynamic capitalist market. So Williams Act, I think, was passed in 1968. Should have been repealed. But there's so many things like that in finance that should be repealed. Poison pills, I think they are legitimate if you're willing to defend them in a court once shareholders sue you for not maximizing their wealth. Shareholders should be allowed to sue managers for threatening or exercising a poison pill. Now, poison pills are often used just as a negotiating tactic, and in that sense, they increase shareholder wealth or can increase shareholder wealth. But if they're actually executed and destroy a wealth-creating event, managers should be liable, and there should be the ability to sue them for whatever loss there was. The Oceanist. Leftists will look you straight in the eye and call AOC or Bernie centrists. They're nuts. I mean, the only way in which they're centrists is if what they consider far left to be either out and out communists or out and out nihilists, the Antifa-like nihilists. But no, AOC and Bernie Sanders are out there on the left. They're not as bad as Antifa, but in a sense of the sheer unadulterated nihilism of them. But they're bad. Oceanus again, thank you, AOC, for keeping the stereotype of the Americans being bad at geography alive. Yes, we don't want that particular stereotype to go away. It's actually a true stereotype. Americans are really, really bad at geography. I have plenty of first-hand experience at that. Most Americans have no clue about geography. And that goes back, that's not modern. I remember going to school in the U.S. in the mid-'70s, And my schoolmates had no clue about geography. I mean, literally, they had no idea where Vietnam was, even though the Vietnam War had just ended. Gary, AOC seems like a recipe for JD Vance 2028. If his circle is smart, they'll do anything they can do to get her in the ballot. Cheers to George Washington. Yeah. Yes, I think AOC would, if she ran against JD Vance, it's the one chance JD Vance actually has of winning. Roman, parts for prototypes are widely available in China. If the West loses such companies, isn't it fair to say that this puts us in a market disadvantage? Prototypes for what? I mean, yeah, then we'd have to recreate it. We're going to be at disadvantaged, but it doesn't mean we can't replace that. And look, if China is a real threat to the United States, then maybe we shouldn't trade with them at all. But I don't know what prototypes you're talking about, prototypes for what, but, we'll just have to recreate the industries. It'll be expensive. It'll take a little bit of time, but there's nothing we can't do if it's really necessary to do it. And of course, we can also, instead of bringing it to America, we can also what's called French shore it and encourage the Mexicans or the Argentinians or the Brazilians or the Canadians to build it instead. And that's not what Trump is doing. He's alienating all those countries instead of encourage them to friend shore, bring industry to shore with friendly countries. Philosophy at work. Would you consider a discount for a song review if it comes with a guarantee that you will enjoy every aspect of the song? Sure, make me an offer. I like numbers. Do white people have special responsibility with race? No. I mean, the only special responsibility they have is to stop being racist. That is, to stop acknowledging race, to stop thinking in terms of race, to stop thinking in terms of white versus non-white, to stop thinking about it. That's the only responsibility they have. But look, everybody was racist, going far back enough. But racism, qua race, is a fairly modern phenomenon. It's a early 19th century, maybe late 18th century invention. Before it was just about skin color or ethnicity or religion. Race is a concept of relatively modern concept. Roman, the People's Republic of China is not a democracy. Should companies registered in Hong Kong, China, therefore actually be considered valid in law? For what purpose? I mean, as long as they come to the United States, they have to abide by the law in the United States, so why not? Buyer beware. That is, if you take your company and go and do stuff in China, you have to beware. There's a cost. You're dealing with a country that's not free. And that could confiscate your assets. It could force you into doing things you don't want to do. So you have a choice whether to go into China or not. Daniel, is an individual's characteristics, predisposition, etc., that you're asking to judge be rooted, at least in part, in their collective identity? Well, I don't think there is such a thing as collective identity. I mean, does the culture in which you grow up impact you? Sure. But you, in the end of the day, create what's important about you. You create your character. You choose your values. You choose the ideas that shape your actions. You choose the actions that you take. So sure, you're going to be influenced by the culture to the extent that you abandon your own mind. The more you engage with building your own soul, your own character, your own personhood, the less influence the culture will have on you. But yeah, I mean, you might like certain foods because you grew up with that food. You might, the non-significant, the insignificant stuff might be affected by the culture in which you grew up. But again, none of that is race. None of that is ethnicity. Do I understand Jewish humor better than somebody who didn't grow up amongst Jews? Sure. But that's not important. It's important for which comedy I might enjoy, but it's not important for my life or how you should judge me. So, no, nothing important. And what I want you to judge people based on is their character, their actions, their ideas, how they implement those ideas, their integrity, their independence, their honesty. That's what I want you to judge people on. Alex says, you don't have TDS. Thank you, Alex. I appreciate that. I know I don't. I like numbers. Could it be racist to note Rubio's skin tone? Well, it depends. For what purpose? If you're noting his skin tone just as an observation of different people's skin tones, then no. If you're noting it in terms of Rubio probably doesn't need to put as much suntan lotion on when he goes to the beach as I do, that's not racist. But if you attribute to his skin tone any kind of meaning that is associated with his character, ideas, his belonging or not belonging to America or to Europe or to Western civilization or anything like that, then it's racist. Quickens. To what extent does a nation need to protect its citizens' rights in order to be considered a sovereign nation? Well, I mean, what the exact line is hard to tell, but certainly to be a sovereign nation, you have to have, I'd say, free elections. That is, you have to have the ability to replace political parties, political leadership. You have to have free speech, and you can't imprison political prisoners. You can't imprison people for their political views. If you don't have those three, if you have political freedom, elections, if you have protection of free speech, and you don't imprison your political rivals, then I think you should be considered sovereign. That is the minimum. The Oceanist. A lot of my training in the Marines was to prepare us for a near-peer force, which meant Russia. After watching the Russian-Ukraine war, I can tell you that we definitely overestimated our adversaries. Yes, I know. I mean, I see it every single war. And I don't, because I've faced at least Russian equipment. And it was pathetic. And I told you that the first day of the Ukraine war, that the Russians would fail. And because I know the equipment. And the equipment says, by the way, a lot about the army, the attitude. Because Russian equipment is anti-person, anti the soldier. It's not suited for soldiers. It's theoretical. It doesn't care. People are treated like meat, like cannon fodder. They don't think about the value of soldiers' lives. That tells you a lot about what you need to know about an army. And an army that treats its soldiers like that is not going to win wars. And an army that builds equipment like that is not going to win wars. So, I mean, their battle tanks. Yeah, I know firsthand about their battle tanks. And the battle tanks, because I was trained on battle tanks to combat Russian-made battle tanks. The I-72s are super cramped, and yet they only have 3 members. They have an automatic loader. And when you look at the automatic loader, it breaks constantly. So what we discovered in the Israeli military is you didn't have to hit the T-72 to disable it. You just had to have a bomb explode close to T-72, and the automatic loader would malfunction. And then the rest of the crew would run away. And that's how Israel captured the first T-72 in 1982 war, is not by hitting it, by hitting close to it. It was just and that was at the time, state of the art, super duper, the best tank in the world. And yet, it couldn't stand up to an old Centurion British tank that Israel was using. That it just started getting the American M whatever tanks, and it just had the first batch of the Merkava, which is Israeli-made tank. But you compare an Israeli-made tank or an American-made tank to a Russian-made tank, it's just no comparison. Just compare a F-15 to a MiG anything. Never mind an F-35. It just there's no there. Now the question is China better? And I don't know. Maybe China is near peer, but Russia was never near peer. Yeah, I mean, the Merkava has air conditioning. Can you imagine? AC in a tank. That's ridiculous. That's how comfortable they are. Matt, please make your want to stop racism rant into a short. It's funny, the people who correctly gave you this advice to the left are behaving the same way. God, I wish I remembered where I made the one to stop racism rant. If you have a time stamp, let me know. Mindspan, did you see that Israeli co-creative TV series Tehran, Dana Evan, was found dead in a hotel yesterday in Greece while filming 4th season of Tehran? Yes, and early speculations was she was murdered by the Iranians for daring to portray them as bad guys in the TV series. But it sadly was probably a suicide. But they're still not sure. So there's still conflicting reports, but there's no definitive answers to how she died. At least last time I looked. Real Spark, why did gold go from 5,300 to 4,700 last week? I don't know. And I don't know why it went to 5,300 to begin with. And I don't know why it's at, what is it? It's at 5,000 now. So, I mean, it's a speculative asset right now. And people are speculating about where it's going to be in the future. I think it's decoupled, in my view. And I know this contradicts a lot of the people out there. In my view, it's being decoupled from fundamentals, from measures of inflation, the dollar's value, the economy, geopolitical risk. I think it's decoupled from all of those. I think now it's just it's a little better, but it's trading like Bitcoin. Bitcoin, by the way, which is under 70,000 now, and pretty solidly under 70,000. Once in a while, it peaks above and then drops down, and it's actually gone down as low as I think 63,000. But it's trading at 68.5 now. So it's very volatile. Why is it at any given point? Because that's where investors want it to be. There's no there. Now with Bitcoin, the cost to mine a Bitcoin about $65,000. So right now, miners, even if they get a coin, are not being rewarded for getting it. So Bitcoin's in trouble. We'll see where it heads. It could head way up from now, but it's miners are at least in trouble right now. Real Spark, when I read LP, Leonard Peikoff, Anomalous Parallels, describe the philosophies of Kant and Hegel, it sounded like hippie junk. Why didn't anyone call out these guys as nuts? Well, because it's very sophisticated. And it's very consistent with like the rationalist philosophy, particularly Kant, of the past. And there was very little kind of solid enlightenment-based rational philosophy from which to criticize it. And they just, it's very technical, and people struggled with figuring it out because they themselves had different versions of bad philosophy. I think to really get Kant, you have to have Ayn Rand first. To really get him, to really get the badness, the evil of it, the nonsense of it, you have to first be. I think Hegel is easier to see his nuts, and I think some of the Anglo-Saxon philosophers saw that. But in Germany, he was leveraging Kant, and once you accept Kant, Hegel is more manageable, I guess. Roman, imagine having a Marxist collectivist backlash against MAGA fascism in the upcoming election, while the CCP is moving away from communism, saying Deng Xiaoping considered it a failed economic model. Well, that's not fair. Deng Xiaoping, that's right. Deng Xiaoping moved away from communism. Yes, I mean, yes, there's definitely a resurrection. I think, again, the left is looking for anchors. It's looking for foundations. And the post-colonialism woke stuff is kind of blew up in their face. And so they're going back maybe to their roots. It doesn't mean they're abandoning the post-colonial stuff, the intersectionality stuff. They'll just emphasize their class struggle, Marxist stuff more because they know woke is so unpopular. Neo, Egypt's military is getting strong, worrying. No, remember, Egypt's military is all U.S. equipment. I don't think they can function in a war without America's support. With America's support, Egypt attacking Israel, if they did, that would be a real problem. But, you know, Israel modifies all the equipment it gets from America. So American F-35s are the best in the world. All right, Philosophy at Work has found a song. He's cheating a little bit that I would like, but I'll take it for 50 euros. Thank you. We'll do that. So I'm not too, you know, I think we should always worry and watch them, but I'm not overly worried about the Egyptian army. And again, the motivation of the military commanders is not high, or the soldiers not high. So, yeah. All right, Roman, eradicate vocist ideas by highlighting the superiority of trade between individuals over territorial property conquest through force. Yes. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, individualism is the philosophy that says trade with other people, other individuals. Win-win. Engage in trade with other people on the other side of the ocean. You're still trading with individuals. Countries don't trade. Collectives don't trade. Individuals do. And trade is win-win. And people get that at some level. And yeah, we need to abandon the collectivistic view of economics, the collectivistic view of anything in life, everything in life. All right, guys, thank you. I appreciate it. We did phenomenally well on Super Chat, so thank you. We're only $39 away from our 750 goal, which is great. I will see you all tomorrow. Tomorrow's show is, I think it's a little later usually. Yeah, tomorrow's show will be 3 p.m. East Coast time. Tomorrow, 3 p.m. East Coast time. Before you leave, like the show. Subscribe if you're not a subscriber. Like and subscribe. Like and subscribe. And don't forget patreon.com. Yaron Brook Show, monthly support. See you tomorrow. Bye, everybody.